Australia has joined with 14 other countries, reiterating the group's intention to recognize a state of Palestine as part of a two-state solution. The new joint statement also supports moves to disarm Hamas and its exclusion from Palestinian governance. So what are the chances of that ever happening? Let's get more on this with Deakin University Professor of Global Islamic Politics, Greg Barton. Greg, good to have you back on the program with us. Now, many countries are now considering following in the footsteps of France, or at least the UK, in recognizing the state of Palestine, but they want Hamas disarmed. So will Hamas's leadership ever even consider something like this?
Well, it's so hard to be sure, isn't it? I mean, we've seen at times when it looked like Hamas was considering a deal where their leaders would be taken out of the Gaza Strip and allowed to go into exile. At the moment, of course, things have just turned from bad to worse since March, since the end of that ceasefire and this growing famine conditions. What was a nightmare has become even unimaginably worse. But Hamas is in a weak position. If there can be a negotiated solution, it's still possible to negotiate with them. They don't have much strength. They have some remaining fighters. They can cause a problem, but they're not in a position to really call the shots. But Israel needs to negotiate, and Israel, it would seem, is only going to negotiate under pressure from an international coalition that will commit to rebuilding the Gaza Strip if there is a roadmap forward a day after the conflict, and that has to include some plan for a Palestinian state, because as remote as that seems, there's no other way to think of a future in which 7 million Palestinians and 7 million Jews in Israel and Palestine can live side by side with both enduring peace and good prospects for the future. So that's where we're at. Nothing is easy, but we're still back with this question of looking at a political solution.
Yeah, speaking of political solutions, what do you make of the fact that Qatar, Saudi Arabia and Egypt are also signatories to the statement that Australia signed, telling Hamas to disarm and surrender control of Gaza?
I think that's really significant. We know that Qatar has presented itself as kind of a neutral Switzerland where negotiations can take place. That has been useful for many parties, but it also means that Qatar has been reluctant, and Saudi Arabia, for other reasons, to come out against Hamas. To have this strong condemnation. Egypt, of course, it's the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood. It's the origins of Hamas, broke away or became independent in 1987. So to have Egypt, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, key countries in the region in terms of any future redevelopment of Gaza Strip, to be so clear in condemning Hamas, I think is a major breakthrough. I think this is a moment when, if the leadership is there, it's possible to sort of break the logjam and get some different possibility occurring.
Yes. So you mentioned earlier that Hamas's leadership is quite weakened, and so is his military prowess. But how are Palestinians regarding Hamas's leadership in Gaza at the moment, particularly given the destruction that's happened since October 7, 2023?
Well, as best we can tell, Hamas is deeply unpopular. We see some very brave protests by people in Gaza against Hamas, which, if you think about the circumstances, it's been sort of run as a police state, and during this wartime, that's even more dire. So that the fact that people would protest openly is a strong sign both of Hamas's weakness and of their courage. But we don't have good data from the Gaza Strip, apart from the obvious catastrophe. International journalists are not allowed there. Many of the Palestinian journalists in Gaza have been, it would appear, targeted for killing. It's a really difficult situation to try and get through the fog of war. I think we can safely conclude, though, Hamas was not popular before they started this conflict with the terror attack of October 2023. They've destroyed the lives of people in Gaza. They're deeply unpopular for that reason. Their own military strength is very compromised. They're still powerful enough to be a nuisance, but they're hardly in a position to demand that they play a role in the future of the Gaza Strip.
Yes, and of the many countries that are now, supporting the recognition of a Palestinian state, one of the things that they have asked is for the Palestinian Authority to perhaps take the reins in some way or the other. But, their base, I wouldn't say power base, but base is in the West Bank. So where does the Palestinian Authority sit? Because we know Hamas and Fatah don't get along.
No, that's right. I mean, Hamas defeated Fatah and took control of the Gaza Strip in 2007. So there's a long history of acrimony there that's left Hamas in the Gaza Strip, but out of the West Bank. The Palestinian Authority has been sort of reduced to a shell of itself for reasons of its own internal lack of competency and lack of accountability and leadership, but also in terms of the way that it's been positioned by various Israeli governments, particularly by governments led by Bibi Netanyahu, who have been opposed to the idea of a Palestinian state being created. And in recent years, that's included sort of backdoor support of Hamas, under the conviction that Hamas that was busy in the Gaza Strip would stay away from conflict, and you would kick the can down the road of a Palestinian state. That, of course, backfired dramatically, but it means that the Palestinian Authority has just been run down to a position where it has no current strength. Hamas has delegitimized any role that it might play in future. Prior to the terror attack of October 7th, 2023, you could have imagined some negotiated role for Hamas. Not anymore. There are Palestinian leaders, including a number of who are currently in prison, who have broad respect and broad confidence, including of many Israelis. And so we could imagine a situation when a weak, reconfigured and reinvented Palestinian Authority could play a role, but in its current form, it can't.
Yes, and given we are focusing this interview on Hamas, Greg, can you remind us at this stage, of how and when Hamas was formed in Gaza and how it became this powerful force?
It grew out of the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood, which was a presence in Gaza and across the West Bank since the 1950s. Of course, it became a controversial group in Egypt. Its leader was executed in 1966. Many Arab states have been very opposed to the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood, and of course, it temporarily was in government in Egypt. It was forced out. Hamas, though, declared its own sort of independent role. The name is an acronym. It stands for the Arabic word zeal or valor, but it's an acronym meaning the Islamic sort of resistance. It was formed in 1987. I think a critical data point is that there were elections in January of 2006 after the Israelis had withdrawn from the Gaza Strip. Hamas won the largest share, on 44% of the vote, but the majority of seats in a Palestinian administration. It then ended up in conflict with Fatah. As a result, it ended up pushed out of the West Bank, but it took control of the Gaza Strip and has been in control ever since, up until it launched this terror attack of October 7th, 2023. So it's become an increasingly radical group, particularly these last 22 months. That terror attack completely delegitimized any standing it might have had prior to the attack. And it's very significant, as we noted earlier, that the Egyptian government has joined in the condemnation of Hamas.
Okay, Greg Barton, we'll leave it there, but I really appreciate your analysis and the time with us today. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.